Hello, everyone. There's a lot of people here already. Boy, I can't believe it's June already. I'm just still wondering what happened to July. Holy mackerel. Look at everybody here. Bristol, UK, Orlando, Florida, Australia. Excellent. I know everybody, there's a lot of people here already, and I've already received a number of questions, so I'm going to kind of just jump right into it. So keep my head up here because the camera's up there, not talking to myself. I have been off for a couple of weeks. People have been asking me, how am I doing? I was just overtired, and there's so many things and moving pieces involved in making a video that if I don't have the brain space, they just don't happen. So I shipped my youngest son, who's an adult, but he off to my parents for a week where with the dog. So I had some time to rest. I thought I was going to do projects A, B, C, and D, and I ended up just resting a lot. So I'm back today. I hope, and I'm so glad everybody is here. I have a couple of questions already prepared. One of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time is, what is value? Because I keep talking about value in my questions. So in my videos. So what you can download these sheets from my YouTube channel, from my website. It's under downloads and handouts, and it's under color. But if you don't know what I'm talking about with value, go watch my color series on value, on color harmony. There's 4 parts. The first one's on color, the second one's on color harmony, the third one's on finding your color zone, and the fourth one is how to apply it to your quilt. So if you take a look at the wedge, or you may even have this 3-in-1 tool, which I recommend, and maybe Brandy can put that link in the notes of how to get it. But value is basically a scale of white and black. And you'll find it way over, it's on this side of the color wedge, and high value is white and low value is black. And how much of that is in your color calls it a high value or a low value. So if you take a look at my quilt back here, I'm calling this my lemonade quilt because I went to make a quilt and I cut all the fabric wrong. So this is what I made with it. So you take a look at like these fabrics down here at the bottom, these are all high value. And then you look at these dark ones, and these are the dark value. And the easiest way to know whether your fabric is light or dark is to take a picture with your camera and just go to the color settings and turn it into a black and white photo. And that will tell you the light and the dark. And sometimes you might be looking at your quilt and it's kind of blah, and you're not quite sure what's going on with it. Why you've got lots of color, you've got lots of pattern. Why is it not punchy? And probably it's a value question. You've got too many things of the same value, and you just need to have a bigger range. So that's what I mean when I say value. So on here, the colors that have the least value are down here on the bottom, and the colors that have the highest value are up on the top. And if you're taking a look at this one, so the highest values are up here, and the darkest values are down here. So that is value in a nutshell. There are ways that there's other terminologies, like color is used in photography, color is used in painting, color is used in printing. It's used in so many different ways. So other, like photography uses another system. They use an RBG system. So you get into things like brightness, and I heard somebody talk about clarity the other day. really all you need to know is high and low. High and low. The other question I had the other day was, what is the difference between scissors and shears? Shears sounds a lot more fancy. I have my LDH scissors here, my black edition. And you may, if you haven't seen my interview with Ursula McClintock on scissors, go take a watch at that because she talks about scissors a lot. But it's basically the shape of the blades. So this is a regular pair of scissors and this is a pair of shears. And basically the blade on both of these are identical. And where this one is, it's more flat on the bottom and this one is more angled. And it's just so that when you have this against your table, you can cut along your tabletop. So that's shears. Hello, Susie from New Kensington, Pennsylvania, and Kathy Lee from London, Ontario. Somebody from Brampton. Oh, Sandra. Sandra from Brampton. Hello, Sandra. I'm just going to refer, Brandy, my VA is in the background. Taylor is no longer with me. She got a full-time job as she's a teacher. She's been a teacher for many years, but she just moved back to Ontario a couple of years ago, and she's just getting herself back into the school system. So she's got a full-time job and fortunately doesn't have time for me anymore. So I wish her all the best. So Brandy's with me. She's in New Brunswick, and I'm in Ontario. So it's amazing how we can work with people from so far away. I understand I've got somebody here from Chile. I've got somebody here from Luxembourg. I've got somebody here from Singapore. I've got wonderful memories of my trip to Singapore. I would like to go back again. Hopefully that the things will open soon. Melissa Teets has asked, how do you get rid of an iron imprint on fabric? Unfortunately, you really can't, because often what you've done is you have burnt your fabric, or there's something on your iron that's burnt into your fabric. So I don't know, or there's a polyester component and you've actually melted the fabric. So somebody else may have some opinion on how you can get those out, but in my experience, those things are permanently into your fabric. So unfortunately, that's a no. Bridget has asked, when decluttering quilts, how many years of projects do you keep? Do you have an equation, projects per year versus time? I'm not sure if she's talking about completed quilts or she's talking about finished quilts. And I'm not at that point where I have too many in my house, but I am constantly giving my quilts away as well. So I'm not trying to accumulate them, but there is going to be that time. I think you should probably work with the ones that mean the most to you. Keep those ones close. And as I've been talking to art, quilt historians and other people involved in the history of quilts, you should be writing down the stories attached to them if those are the ones that you're keeping. And just go and leave that legacy for people that will have the quilt after you. And the other ones, you can find good homes too. I had a woman send me an email about a beautiful purple quilt that she had just made. And she had donated to ALS because that is their color. And I realized that the quilt that I'm working on right now, I'm just making it out of purple scraps. And I was wondering, what am I going to do with this? And then I realized, I can send it to an ALS charity. So think along those lines too. What colors do they represent and what charities possibly can they align with? Okay. Dawn has asked, is the 3-in-1 tool based on CMYK, RBG, or Classic? It is based, well, it's, so you've got the rainbow. I think it covers all of them. And this is one reason why I like this one so much. It's got the full color wheel and it's got the classic harmonies on the back, but attached to every single code, I'm not sure if you can see them up close, they will give you the code for the CMYK, for the RBG, and actually for the standard code. So if you're trying to give this code to somebody else, they'll know which code you're talking about. So the other thing that this has is when you're looking for balance of red and green, it also has these two little filters on the back. I don't use these that often anymore. I just use the black and white, and then I use my own eye. But sometimes you may want to use those just to get a balance, see whether you've got a good balance of colors. But I love this tool. Sarah has asked, how many quilts should I keep for a trunk show? Well, there's two parts of that. How many do you want to carry? Because they can be pretty darn heavy. And how much does each story have to tell? So to me, it's the stories that the quilts that you want to show are the quilts that have the big stories behind them. Either you're talking about a technique, or you're talking about your life when you made it, or you're talking about, you know, the whole story behind making the quilt and who you made it with. So I don't know how much you like to talk. I'm finding that I am making some smaller quilts lately just with that in mind, that if I'm doing a trunk show, I want a smaller quilt to show. So, and leaving the king size quilts at home. So it's going to be a combination of how much you can carry and how talkative you are about your own quilt. So there's no right answer, but normally you speak for 40 minutes, divide that by 5. I would say between 8 to 12 quilts. But I certainly have been to trunk shows where people have 30. So again, think of how you want to talk and what you want to carry. Olivia, what are inexpensive ways to make a label? You can embroider it on without anything fancy. You can take a piece of muslin and just write it on with a Sharpie. There are very inexpensive ways. In fact, the label I've never even associated with costs. So there are many people that might take extra pieces from their quilt and they make a piece label. I hope to be doing a video on how to make a label in the future. Joyce Fuller has asked, is it necessary to use synthropol soap to wash the batiks? Unfortunately, I am not an expert on dye. I am not a dyer. It's not something in my wheelhouse. I know I was listening to a woman online saying that she hasn't had a problem with bleeding in 12 years. So unfortunately, I can't answer that. There's probably dyers in the group. So if any of you have an opinion, please put it in the chat. Julie, does Mando have his own quilt? Not yet, but is actually going to be the next one on my long arm. I have some dog fabric that I purchased years and years ago that I'm just going to make into a quilt. It's actually meant to be more of a cover for his crate than it is supposed to be a mat, but we'll just keep it with him where we go. What hand cream do I use? Anne Betancourt has asked, what hand cream do I use? Your hands are very sensitive and I don't want to leave a residue on my fabric. I have really sensitive hands too, and it's just amazing how working with fabric dries them out. But I really don't use anything fancy. I just use, I think it's a Vaseline product, a name brand on it, and I use it after I work on my fabrics, not before I work on my fabrics. And one of the other things that I use is not a loofah sponge, what are they called? A pumice stone. And every time I take a shower, I just scrub down my hands, taking off all the dead skin, and then I use some cream afterwards. So the trick with keeping your hands moist is when they're wet, moisturizing right after. Don't dry your hands to like bone dry. Leave them a little bit damp and put the cream on over top, and that seals the moisture in. Yeah, that's what I know about hand cream. Michelle, Michelle has asked, is there a way to predict in advance to know what direction to press the seams so they all play nicely together? This is one of my pet peeves. I get so frustrated when I get it wrong because I really like all my seams to nest properly. So that's one reason to do the practice piece. And when you're doing the practice piece, when you're done, then you take a thought of the piece that's going to go next to it. Have you pressed your seams in a way that the next one can, if you press them exactly the same way, will the next one just fit into that? Sometimes you have to do them the opposite way, and you go back and you figure out how things are pressed, but take the time. Even like this one, I realized as I was making it that there is a seam right here, right down the middle, and these are going the opposite direction. So I realized while I was making it, I made 2 of these ones and 2 of these ones, that each one of them had to go the opposite way. So all these seams are going this way and all these seams are going that way. So you just need to take a moment right at the very beginning to think that one through. You may have an idea, but then you got to test that idea, because sometimes something's just going to sneak in there and fool you. And if there's the odd seam, it depends on the quilt, right? If I'm just making a scrappy quilt that's not, it's not a big deal, I don't have a problem with some of them flopping the other way, because remember, it's going to go down into your quilt. After you quilt it, it's going to go into your batting, and that little fold over isn't going to be so much, but it really does make a difference when you're meeting those points and all those intersections are coming together. Yeah. How is Mando doing? My pup, he is a teenager. Holy mackerel. He is a handful. He is full of energy. He is over 35 pounds. He is big. He's going to get bigger, and he's just losing his first teeth and getting the next teeth. So I've got still another 4 months of lots of work, but he's got lots of energy, so we can get out and go for some walks. So we're trying to find that sweet spot in the day when it's not too hot, and we've got a couple of watering spots that we can get to during the walk. So that's the Mando update. Am I teaching or attending any quilt shows this summer? The only one I'm not going anywhere this summer, but I am speaking, or I've been asked to speak at the Festival of Quilts in Birmingham, but that's going to be online, so there'll be a lecture there. But next year, I hope to get out. Jackie has asked, I have just finished a Tulip Pink elephant applique. It's very fiddly, small pieces that have been ironed onto the fabric. Is there a very easy, quick way to sew around small bits? Not really. That's the problem with the small bits. It's fiddly and it will take time. So there's people that like to do small little fiddly bits, and there's people that don't. So if you don't like to do it, or you don't have the energy to do it right now, just put it aside. Sometimes these fiddly projects are best worked. You know, I talk about my 30-minute timer all the time. Just do it for 30 minutes at a time, and eventually it will all get done. And that'll stretch your patience, and just work at it a little bit at a time. What do I do for self-care? One of the important things is recognizing it. For me, I know I'm getting run down when I begin to get very irritated with people around me. they're not doing it right. They're not doing this and things like that. And I realize that's just my anxiety, and my worry is going off in another direction. So the best thing to do is sleep. That's the number one thing that you need to do for self-care, is get the rest, or at least for me. I'm an overcommitter and I need to rest. The second thing is I need to reach out to my friends and talk about things that don't have anything to do with quilting, and find out what's going on in other people's lives and let them be nice to me. It's always nice when people are worried or concerned for me. So knowing that I'm not alone is very helpful as well. The other thing is just looking at how I'm eating, making sure that I'm eating at the right time. I have men in my life that like to eat late at night, and my body is just not very good at that. So it's trying to shift everything to the way the circadian rhythms of my body. So I have not gone into a depression. It's just really been a burnout. So I try to stop it before it gets any farther. I'm also worried about things. As I get more and more tired, I become more and more worried about things. So I have to deal with them. If there's some family issues, if there's some financial issues, if there's, all these different worries, I've got to start dealing with them. I've got to have a plan of, sometimes it's just talking to someone saying, am I the only one that has to put their shoes away at the end of the day? Those types of things. And then there's other things saying, you know what, we cannot be eating at 9 o'clock at night, guys. We've got to be shifting our diet down. So dealing with those types of things too. So that's how I do self-care. And sometimes you need to reach out and get some more professional help. And I know it's hard at the moment for a variety of reasons. We're stuck inside. We're not going to be with a person in person, but sometimes that can be an advantage. But reach out and get that extra help if just doing these certain things don't make a difference. If you find that you're still low and you still can't get out, reach out to your family doctor first, if nothing else, and then see if you need more help. That was a very serious subject. Now I'm going to go and talk about something kind of flippant. Sherry has asked, can I prevent dulling my needle when sewing through paper for paper piecing? Nope. Paper is paper. You can choose to use a lighter weight paper, which is less stressful on your needle. That's like newsprint and what you can get on the doodle pads and things like that. But a needle is not that expensive. Buy them in bulk. Have them in beside your sewing machine so you don't hesitate to switch them. I buy them. I think I buy them 50 at a time. I buy them in these big packs. Louise, what is your opinion on invisible thread? Well, invisible thread, that's that filament, monofilament. So many people just swear by it, but I'm still not over the hurdle. I've used it a couple of times and it does nothing but cause me grief. I find it very springy. I find it snaps a lot. So I still have to work a little bit more. I'm taking a class right now with Sheila Frampton Cooper, and she swears by it. So, and she's got a very similar machine than I do. So obviously I am doing something incorrect. So I just have to work on my technique. But do I really need it? There might be some places where I might need it in the future, but right at the moment, I don't actually need it. So, yeah, my opinion is it works. So many people use it, so it definitely does work, but there is a learning curve on how to use it. Cindy Lee has asked, what does eat the frog mean? So I have that on the back of my mugs. Eat the frog first. It's a condensed version of an old Mark Twain saying. And the saying is, if you have to eat a frog, it's best to eat it first thing in the morning. And if you have to eat two, eat the big one first. And what that really means is do the hard thing first, because we spend so much time in our head procrastinating the hard thing and avoiding the hard thing and pretending the hard thing's not there, that if we had just done the hard thing at the beginning, we would have all this time to do all the things we do want to do. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh, that is just so me. And it's true. If you get the hard thing out of the way at the beginning, then you have the rest of the day of guilt-free joy because you got the hard thing out of the way. So that's what I mean by eat the frog first. And in quilting, that's often going backwards or doing a fiddly technique that you don't want to do. So combine that with your 30-minute timer, and you should be able to get through some pretty hard spots. Lexi would like to know, how far apart can she quilt parallel lines when spacing specifically for batting? Oh, when the spacing specified for the batting is 8 inches, 9 inches, or whatever. So the batting is telling you that you can space them 8 inches, 9 inches, or 10 inches apart. Like every batting will give you some direction on spacing. But that may not be aesthetically pleasing. So it's just that balance between. So they're telling you that if it says 8 inches, that you can put your spacing 8 inches apart, and the batting will hold up in between. It won't break down. It won't pull. It's got enough stuff within it that will keep its shape and not pull apart. But if then you go into your design. Is that the way that you want them that far apart, or do you want them narrower? So I normally start with the wide ones, and then I do the ones halfway in between that, and then do the ones halfway in between that, because sometimes I run out of steam. So I do the wide ones and then decide and then get smaller and smaller. Because there's been a couple of times when I've done all the one section first in all the different directions and all the straight lines, and then I realized this is way too much quilting, but I've already done that first row. So I felt that I've had to commit through. So you can start with the wide ones, go to the middle ones, and then break it down as small as you want to go. How can I pick out quilting fabric at a dress store? So there's a number of fabrics that, there's a number of different fabrics that can be applied easily, from dressmaking to quilting. We are talking wovens. What you are looking for is a nice tight weave. Wovens can often be great because if there's a directional element to them, in a woven, that line is more likely to be parallel, where on a quilting fabric, that directional element can be often off grain. There's a problem with shrinkage between different types of fabric, though. So I would recommend that you pre-shrink everything before you start. It's really, when you're combining different types of fabric, to me, that's the big thing. You shrink them at the beginning, so when you wash your quilt again, it all shrinks at the same rate. But the other thing that you need to note is the scale. You know, when you're making a dress, those big, bold patterns are beautiful because you've got the whole body to cover. Whereas when you're quilting, as you can see in the quilt behind me, that when you get into the small pieces, the pattern disappears. So just be looking for scale. I talk about using a template, you know, or you can just take your hands and just shift it around the fabric and just see whether the pattern is consistent. because you can sometimes when you cut fabric into those small sizes, you can get very different colors, different values. And if you're trying to make it in a consistent place, you're just not going to get that consistency that you're looking for. Okay, so people are asking me about the quilt behind me. So this, I'm calling this my lemonade quilt. When I was making my STASHBUSTER number 8, I bought this fabric. It's from Cider by Basic Gray. I bought this to make it out of, and I cut it all wrong. I can't believe how badly I cut it. And I cut twice as much fabric as I needed, and therefore I had my proportions wrong. And yeah, it was, I wrote out the pattern. The pattern was correct, but I stupidly did not refer to my pattern before I cut. I just did it off the top of my head. So I had all these strips. I had 80 strips of fabric cut into different sizes. And this is just an L block. This is just an L block. So it starts off with one piece up here, and they're just applied in a braid to here. So this whole quilt is 80 inches wide and 80 by 80. And I had this Kaufman linen out that I was trying to take a test drive for my quilt coat that I'm making, and it wasn't quite right, but then I held it up to this, and it's just absolutely perfect. And quite frankly, by the time I get my quilt off the long arm, I pretty well hate it. Like, I just want to throw it in the garbage. But this miracle always occurs when I put on the binding, and it's just, now it's one of my favorite quilts. It's just so funny how a quilt can go from least favorite to favorite. It has an all over free motion quilting pattern. I went to Whirls and Swirls, one of her daily challenges that she did, and it has a tulip leaf with 2 swirls on it. And the challenge was just to get it even all over doing the pattern free motion, but I'm really quite pleased with it. So yeah. And if I told you off the top of my head, I would have said that I don't care for these fabrics down here. But as a whole, together, I like the way it turned out. So that's my lemonade quilt. How do I feel? Super Susie asked me, how do I feel about my Panasonic iron? So I got my Panasonic iron in November of last year, maybe late October. And I took it for a really hard test drive before I did the video. It was highlighted in my video, Organize Your Sewing Space Part 1. And I still really, really love that iron for a number of different reasons. It's not a big iron. And I find in quilting, a smaller head is often better. That's one reason I like the fact that it's on my portable ironing table and I can just move it wherever, and I can take it off. If I need my full ironing table surface, I can easily just take it off, put it on another surface, and let it rest and charge there. So it's not a rechargeable iron. You've got to remember it uses like a heat sink. So there's a big block within the iron that is heated up, and that holds the heat. So even if it turns off, it may retain just enough heat for me to get that last piece that I forgot to iron done. But I find it really good. 2 things. I mentioned in the video that there was that case that I didn't like, but I've got that sort of stored up and out of the way. I don't use it that way that often. Maybe in the future with travel, hopefully opening, I may have more issues with it. But the other thing is it has a very short timing cycle. It has an auto off. So I just have to keep reminding myself to check it that it's still on. I mean, it's a good thing because I often leave my iron on and walk out of the room and forget about it. But if you're working with it, I now just realize I have to walk by my iron. I think it's a 10-minute or 12-minute shut off on it, so I just have to keep turning that off. But I still highly recommend it. It's a great iron. Somebody has asked if I have ever worked with Minky. No, I haven't, but I would like to try. So I'm going to, I just don't have a local supplier of Minky. So I'm going to look into that in the future. What are we at? Okay, so I've got time for about 2 more questions. Leslie has asked, I've made a few really simple quilts but never used the pattern. Reading the instruction both intimidates me and confuses me. Any tips on how to get past that? Well, some people have difficulty with reading, you know, whether it be dyslexia or a phonological recall issue, or there's so many different reasons why. But how you get past that is don't be in a panic to do it all at once. I personally don't like to read through patterns. It forces, but I know I have to. You know, it's like I just, you know, at the beginning I have so much forward momentum while I'm doing a quilt, and I think in my head, oh, I know how to put this together, and I really have to force myself to sit down and read through the instructions. And one way I do that is by taking the instructions with me some other place. Like, I'm not sitting at my sewing table just about to do it. The days before or the weeks before, I sit down, I take it outside and read a glass of lemonade, or just try another situation, just reading through the pattern and understanding what they want to do, and just figuring out how I want to make it. Like, these are the instructions on how they want you to make it. That's how they did it. But there's many different shortcuts that you can make. There's many different ways to approach a quilt block. So there's no problem with you making the quilt your way. So do the compromise of how you want to read it, what you want to get out of it, and yeah, how you want to go forward with the pattern. Yeah. So take your time, remove yourself from your sewing, and make notes, or rewrite the pattern your way. Yeah. And Amy. So Amy has asked, she says she finds that she shies away from red quilting cotton. Is there a color that you just seem not to like, or do you pick projects to push your comfort zone? So that's, we come to quilting with all sorts of color prejudices. You know, we have colors that we like, we have colors that we don't like, we have colors that we say are good, bad, sophisticated, silly, boys, girls. You know, we have all these different color prejudices that we come with. But there is also colors that make us feel better. So, and colors that don't make you feel good. They have bad associations with you. For me, I don't like sewing with black. It's not a, I'm a Halloween baby, so black should really be in my wheelhouse, but I find it just sucks the energy out of me. And that's true for all the grays and whites too. I find I have to sew with things that have color in them. And you may have those spots too. There's colors that you don't like or whatever. But how you push your color zone is find the colors that you do love. Like, don't hesitate. If a color makes you feel bad, keep that away. But sit down with the colors that you like and play with them, because there's all sorts of different values. There's all sorts of different saturations. Like, I like a really nice rusty red. Like, that's one of my happy spots. But if I desaturate it, it turns into a peach, which I don't care for at all. So there's different ranges of the hue that you like and don't like. And then once you've settled on your colors, then play with the harmonies. Go back to your color wheel here, go to the back, find the harmonies, and start playing. Because there's all colors, like there's these yellowy, greeny colors that people don't like, but you may find that having just a small bit of it fold your fabric so it's only just a small wedge compared to all the big pieces that you have. And you may find that that contrast really gives your quilt the little bit of punch that it needs. It's not the star of the show, but it makes the star of the show so much better. So play with your fabrics. Play with your fabrics. So I think that that's about it for today. I've got one person here. Marty Richards has said, I've been using your timer for motivation and it works great. I also love your eat the frog first analogy. My father-in-law was a carpenter and he has a saying, just grab the next board. And that's so true. I mean, just even with this last couple of weeks, you know, you just want to do one thing that moves the ball forward. We have so many balls in the air all the time. And if you can just move one thing forward, it does wonders for your self-esteem. So just keep moving it forward and realize it doesn't have to be right. And also realize that once you get the binding on, everything changes. All is forgiven. So thank you so much, everyone from all over, for showing up today. I will be keeping my eye on the chat. If there's any questions that we haven't answered, we'll either incorporate them into the next one, or some of them may turn into Karen's Quilt Circle questions, or maybe even a video. So thank you. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook. And of course, my website, Just Get It Done Quilts, where, again, you can download these color wedges if you want a set of your own. That's freaky. And you can sign up for the newsletter there. So thank you to Brandy in New Brunswick for helping me today. And I'll see you next time. Oh, and tomorrow I have another Karen's Quilt Circle interview going live with Bernina Jeff. And we are talking about sewing machines. He is a wonderful man from Grand Junction, Colorado. So really enjoyed talking to him, and I hope you enjoy that interview too. So hopefully back on Friday with another video. So take care, and I'll see you next time.